Right, welcome to the 72nd episode of the Revolutionary Code, where we bring the truth about how governmental politics actually works in every facet of human existence and how that affects our people, Black people here in America, Africa, and the diaspora. I'm your host, Brother Tamani Mwandani out of Houston, Texas. I am the direct revolutionary product of one Cardinal Bayou Chewy out of the Shrines of the Black Madonna, and the indirect revolutionary product of one Albert B. Clegg Jr., African title named Jeramogi Baby Ajiman, the father of liberation theology and the founder of the Shrines of the Black Madonna. I'm also the founder of the Black Gold Nation movement. Excuse me, my co-host, the chief consultant of the Black Gold Nation's National Political Strategy and Implementation Department and our Adult Education Division. He's also the chairman of LACE, Liberation Advocates for Community Empowerment, the intellectual gangster, corporate grassroots revolutionary, and master domino assassin from Shreveport, Louisiana, AKA The Boot, Brother Craig D. Lee. Brother Craig, how you doing this evening?
I am doing Irie in this very, very cold weather here.
That's right.
Irie.
Yes, sir. Amen. Amen. All right. So we are here to try and get our people, trying to make our people aware of how things work in this country and around the world. But of course, we're not just here just to give you information. We're trying to get our people to do something. So everything we say and everything we do is about bringing our people together to find the right people so we can move forward and build something that matters. So we're not just here to inform and educate. We want to inform, educate, motivate, mobilize, organize, and build. At the end of the day, if we're not moving toward the building of power, the establishment of power, then we're wasting our time and we don't have a lot of time to waste. So tonight's show title is The Collapse of American Support, that is in quotes, American support, the continuation of benign neglect and the rise of the Black nation state. The collapse of American support, the continuation of benign neglect, and the rise of the Black nation state. So we're going to start this evening with an article. I'm going to read an opening paragraph of an article that I came across, and it's eye-opening, and it's telling about the nature and the reality of American society. And of course, we're going to come back and talk about the article as it relates to Black people, because we Black. So I'm sharing my screen right now. You should be able to see it, but Craig, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So hedges, the Democrats, the more effective evil. And of course, we believe that Democrats and Republicans are the same. So don't get caught up on the Democrats, that word Democrat. The U.S. is a de facto one-party state where the ideology of national security, is sacrosanct, unsustainable debt props up the empire, and the primary business is war. So I'm going to read this opening paragraph and then we're going to talk about it. When all else fails, when you are clueless about how to halt a 7.5% inflation rate, when your Build Back Better bill is gutted, when you renege on the promise to raise the minimum wage or forgive student debt, when you can't halt the Republican suppression of voting rights, when you have no idea how to handle the pandemic, which has claimed 900,000 lives, 16% of the world's total deaths, although we are less than 5% of the world's population, when the stock market fluctuates on wild roller coaster rides of highs and lows, when what little help the government offered to the labor force, half of whom, 80 million, experienced a period of unemployment last year, sees the termination of the extended unemployment benefits, rental assistance, forbearance for student loans, emergency checks, the moratorium on evictions, and expansion of child tax credits, when you watch passively as the echo side gathers momentum, then you must make the public afraid of enemies, foreign and domestic. You must manufacture an existential threat, terrorists at home, Russians and Chinese abroad, expand state power in the name of national security, beat the drums of war. War is the antidote to divert public attention from government corruption and incompetence. No one plays the game better than the Democratic Party. The Democrats, as journalist and co-founder of Black Agenda Report, Glenn Ford said, are not the lesser evil, they are the more effective evil.
That's right.
And again, we say that they are in cahoots because they work together. So with that, we're gonna jump right into this thing. So Brother Craig, per the article, the state of affairs in America, of course, is rather serious and bleak for those who lack power. Would you agree that the American quote unquote safety net is disappearing?
There's never been a safety net.
Amen. Good answer. All right. So what is benign neglect? And can you give us a few examples of that? What is benign neglect? And can you give us a few examples of it?
Well, I mean, we've done a show on it, and so it is the willingness to see something negative, bad, destructive against a particular individual or a person or group, and turn a blind eye to it while pacifying the individuals that you are sincerely interested in impacting and helping them, and simultaneously doing the opposite. And so things that have been around this country, as you ask about an example, so-called public education, which is merely public schooling.
Yep.
And the continuation of failing individual students, rise in youth violence inside the schools, rise in no teachers, very few teachers at the school, playing the game, shell game, of putting substitute teachers, those who are willing to go in, knowing that these children are not going to receive any form of real education. This is a form of benign neglect. And it's I see it, but we know we don't know what to do. And we're not going to do anything to go against the system because the system is working perfectly. So we're going to, turn the other way and look the other way. And so that is, and I give that example because with Dads on Duty, we are in the schools on a daily basis. And to see how this thing is being played out, man, it's cold-blooded, brother, because there are teachers, I mean, they have permanent subs.
Yeah.
So as public schools attempt to sway public opinion to say why charter schools are not needed, the whole premise is on selling the nation on the illusion of certified teachers. But the reality is, in most of your public schools, there are very few so-called certified teachers. And even if you are certified, that doesn't mean that you're qualified to actually teach or extrapolate as Dr. Carter G. Woodson said, the latent abilities that exist within an individual so that those abilities connect with the information. And so now what you have is a cesspool of individuals who are unqualified, who are uncertified, who are just posting up, collecting a check off of the backs of students, and the students are complying by not demanding, and the parents are complying by not demanding, because I finally figured it out. This whole thing is nothing but a large daycare facility for the individuals. And you do have a core group of teachers who are willing to teach and maneuver, but in all actuality, it's not enough. It's just not enough there. And this is where we're at. So that's a form of the benign neglect that you see. And I hit on that one because that one now is going to morph into a greater benign neglect when you have incompetent individuals being produced like an assembly line on a daily basis who don't know anything and roll strictly based on irrational emotionalism. There was a fight today at the school and one guy got bloodied up. And so, as one of our dad's on duty members had broken the fight up and brought the guy in the office, the other guy who was bleeding profusely comes in, and he looks and stares at the guy, and they had a civil, disrespectful discourse about what had just happened. And the guy who was bloodied said something first to the guy who was sitting down, who had bloodied him up. And the guy's response was, but you leaking. And leaking is hood terminology for bleeding.
Right.
And so when the young brother who was bleeding went into the nurse's office, which he initially was refusing assistance because he wanted to show how tough he was, I went in some minutes after the security officer and the assistant principal talked to him, and I asked him one question. I say, what was this fight about? And he said, well, last week his friends had a fight, and that guy saw the fight. And so today, the guy looked at me as if he wanted to fight. And I asked him, what was he looking at? And he said, what, you want to fight? And since I'm not a punk, I fought.
Yeah, yeah.
So so you already know what's going to happen.
Yep.
Because guy done got bloody.
Yep.
So this is going to spill out.
Payback, escalate, yeah.
And his friends were waiting outside as if we were going to let the other brother come out so they could jump him outside the door. And so this is where we're at. So you got benign neglect in the schools necessary in order to fuel what? The prison pipeline.
Right, right. And we're going to get to that for sure. So has benign neglect ever not been a thing in America?
Yeah, that's always been a thing. It's a part of the apparatus of the philosophy, system, and game of capitalist white supremacy. Remember, the philosophy, system, and game of capitalistic white supremacy racism is predicated on the creation, maintenance, and expansion of what?
Permanent underclass.
A permanent underclass.
Yes, sir. Gotta have it.
So if you gotta have a permanent underclass, you gotta have what? Benign neglect.
Right, right. Otherwise, the system don't work, and they can't have that. So the existence of benign neglect proves that the American social safety net isn't real, or at best woefully inadequate. Correct?
It's never existed. It's just an illusion.
Okay. So next question: How do you define empowerment and freedom? What are your definitions of empowerment and freedom, or descriptions?
I define empowerment as the ability to control your destiny. And the word "your," as I affectionately like to say, is a two-word structure inside of one term. Y-O-U, you individually, working collaboratively within OUR, our community, to help us elevate and grow. And so empowerment, the ability to control your destiny, and you do that by way of by intellectual property creation, the 6 pillars of empowerment: spirituality, organic right culture, education, economics, socioeconomics, and politics. And freedom is the ability to unlock, unleash, and activate your third eye in order to unlock, unleash, and activate your spirituality. And so if you have not unlocked, unleashed, and activated your third eye, your mind, and which means that you have not unlocked, unleashed, and activated your actual power that connects you to the Creator, which allows you to have supernatural abilities and allows you to have the protection from evil. You're not free. And that's just a reality. So the majority of people will never be free unless we, those of us who have unlocked, unleashed, and activated our third eye, put together a mobilized, organized teams of, and it's going to be a small group that has to wreak havoc against the actual system. Therefore, the majority of people believe that they're free. Hence, the quote that was attributed to not Frederick Douglass, but Harriet Tubman, where allegedly she said, if only they knew they were slaves, I would have been able to free more of them. Could have freed a whole bunch of more if they only knew they were slaves. So you allow people to believe that they're free in order for them to now roll with the programming, the indoctrinated programming that they receive on a daily basis from television, the internet, their peer group, their fractured family environment, all of those entities who are part of their fractured and unleveled village.
Got it. Cool. Okay. So, and this other one is tongue in cheek. So, is anyone going to do the work of empowering and freeing us?
Hell no.
All right. So, I want to be clear.
It's just like when you grew up in the house and you were supposed to make your bed up every morning. Your mama wasn't gonna do it for. I mean, if she was a solid mama, gonna do it for you. And damn sure your partner down the street wasn't gonna be allowed to come to your damn house and make your damn bed or wash your dishes. Nobody is going to do this for us but us. But the sad part about being a slave and imprisoned in your mind, you're trying to demand that the evil people who have enslaved you now unslave you and treat you like what you perceive they're treated. And they don't really understand that will never happen. So they wait on Jesus, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha, everybody to do it for them, except for themselves.
Right. And of course, to be empowered and to be free, you absolutely must have control of your mind. And if you don't have your mind, you can't accomplish anything.
You can't do that. I mean, but be a slave. I mean, you can contribute to the structure as it is,
right?
But you're not going to do anything that would tap into your purpose in life, your why you're put on this planet. You wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah. So per the article I read at the beginning of the show, coupled with the continuation of benign neglect, Black people are in fact on our own. All we have is one another in connection to a higher power, right? No, there's no other entity that's going to show up and do this thing for us, correct?
No other entity.
Yeah.
The Creator will only help us if we begin to put a few feet forward and help ourselves. But the Creator has shown that Creator ain't gonna come do the work, all of the work for you. You got to step up and at least say, I'll fight, and mean it.
Yeah.
I always tell the story of David. If you really think about the story of David, as the scripture talks about him defeating Goliath, think about that. He was a young man.
Mm-hmm.
He was a child. How many so-called men who were nothing but males were afraid to fight Goliath?
All of them. Every last one of them.
All of them were punk ass Negroes afraid to get their ass whooped. And the child, why did it have to happen through a child? Because the child didn't know any better to be scared.
Mm-hmm.
God damn it, I'll knock his ass out. See, when you are allowed to grow older and older in a mentally enslaved mind, you become more and more afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why you have to be rooted at the grassroots level. Because think about it, Moses, although he was raised in the house of the ruling class, he was really a Hebrew, as the scripture says.
Yep.
But although he learned all of the ways of the ruling class, he couldn't just go and lead his people. The scripture says he had to go and struggle amongst them for 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Why?
You have to learn why these Negroes do what they do.
Right. You got to understand your target market.
You got to know, understand, comprehend, and know your target audience.
Right.
Because you're going to be making all kinds of flighty ass recommendations that these Negroes going to be like, Negro, we ain't doing that.
and what's so sad about the adults not wanting to step up and David doing so is that they are afraid of losing something that they think they have. Not even realizing.
Not they think that they believe that they have.
They believe they have. All right.
I've been working with you on that, so I want you to get that totally right, because that's why they can't process the concept of thinking, because they have bypassed the thinking process,
mm-hmm.
and they've gone into the belief process, the acceptance process. And once you do that, it's hard, damn near impossible, to get them to move to a different position, because that's where the cognitive dissonance kicks in.
So go into that a little bit. Why is it hard for them to operate differently? Why is that?
Because they've now accepted whatever their programming was from the childhood. So again, thinking is an intellectual exercise of analyzing options, weighing things, evaluating pros and cons, vetting. Very few people know how to think. They believe they know how to think, and that's the trick in this game, to give you the belief. See, hence why preachers always ask, who are my believers? They don't want you to think about it, they just want you to believe. Right. They want you to bypass that process and go to belief. Now you'll walk through a goddamn brick wall for them, not knowing that what's on the other side is nothing but a hustle, but you're going to be willing to do it because you've been indoctrinated. Now, when you're a thinker, you say, wait a minute, why does he want me to do that? Let me see him do that.
Right.
For doing that. See, now you start to ask too many goddamn questions and you become a problem. You become an issue. So that's why it's hard to get somebody from that position. That's where we're at right now. That's why the creation of social media, the internet, was so important. And if you remember, in over a decade ago, they had started talking about taxing people for being on the internet.
Yep.
Oh, that's real quick. We don't want to tax them. We want them to be on there free.
Right.
And we want to figure ways for them to get money. TikTok, YouTube. So now we're going to divert your goddamn ass all day long through videos and foolishness, and we're going to create a cesspool of chaos, and you ain't going to be able to figure it out. So now, although I'm doing benign neglect every damn day, at every level, local, state, federal, international, you ain't going to be able to figure it out, because as long as you got your TikTok, as long as you got your YouTube, as long as you got your Facebook, as long as you got your drugs, as long as you can go shop, as long as you can go goddamn on some cruises, as long as you go to the goddamn restaurant, guess what? I'm Gucci.
You think you're free.
You believe you free.
Yeah.
And they're going to fight you for that belief.
Yep. And don't want to hear you say anything otherwise, no matter how much proof you bring to the table that you're believing that you're free, don't mean that you are.
Exactly.
All right. So next question. What is the school to prison pipeline? Just the school to prison pipeline. What is that?
The school to prison pipeline is a concept that exists where those who are in the administrative education realm of a school help to facilitate the prison industrial complex by targeting youth, primarily melanated, highly melanated youth, African Americans, Latino Americans, Native Americans. When I say youth, specifically those, but you also have some examples where some white youth have been targeted as well. It's rare, but youth, primarily melanated, so-called minority. And the objective is to now facilitate them into their future home, which is goddamn prison.
Yep.
So you get them acclimated into this process by people who coming into the game with explicit biases and explicit biases that now can help navigate this situation to create a new consumer for the American economy. And that entity now becomes one who consumes illegal activity, rule breaking, and now that person, that child, is funneled into the youth system and then ultimately into the adult prison system. And the main reason why this is very important to house a youth offender versus an adult offender, you actually make more money on the youth versus the adult. In New York, a youth offender can bring up to, I know a few years ago, my stepson did his project back in 2016, 17. New York was $300 and some thousand per year to house a youth offender. And Louisiana, I think, was the lowest, and we were at close to 30,000 a year.
Yeah. And what's so sad is that, of course, it costs less to properly educate a child and prepare them for righteous activity in the community. But when I wrote my book in 2016, at that time, in 2016, every state in the country, every state was building more juvenile prisons and middle schools.
Exactly.
Because they got a plan.
That's the plan. I mean, again, it's a permanent underclass. And I remember when I did a lecture at our local jail, Caddo Correctional Center here, and I went on and put the numbers up to show how, although it appears that, it's $20-some thousand per inmate, I showed them how it's even more money because they're generating income off of your labor, free income. Yep. Hence why we're doing the essay tomorrow, Modern Slavery in America, a critical analysis of the 13th Amendment. So I put on the board, roughly each year, you all are responsible for over $100,000 of generated revenue based on you. I say, but the average that they put into public schooling is roughly $10,000, $11,000. But it's not going to matter if they put $30,000 into public schooling. You know why? 95% of the money is going to go to salaries and benefits.
To the teachers, yeah. Because it's not about educating the youth.
It's not about it. It's using the youth as a pawn for these individuals to get jobs.
That's right.
And those dedicated teachers, after a while, they're gonna get burned out because they see the hypocrisy of the game.
Yeah.
And though they can reach some of the students, hey, that's the whole game. Because see, if you really wanted to see how gangster capitalism is, all you have to do is allow everybody to get straight A's. I mean, I'm talking about if everybody was really learning, getting straight A's, not dropping out, getting bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, plumbing certificates, all of this. If you were doing it, you would really see how gangster capitalism is. Because there's a concept in economics called scarcity of resources.
Right.
There's only so many goddamn jobs you gonna have. You see?
Yeah.
So you gotta create people who will fall through the cracks. Those individuals who devalue education and learning. You gotta create that. Because other than that, you wouldn't have nobody to pick the trash. Right. You wouldn't have anybody to bust tables. You gotta do these things because they're necessary, but you don't want there to be any real value, because if there's real value, now you can command more money in the capital.
All right, so that is a definition of a school to prison pipeline. So what is the cradle to prison pipeline?
The cradle is basically saying we're starting in the home, and in the home, the foundation is cracked, and this is now preparing individuals to go into the school to act out and do all the things that now lay the foundation for them to now activate the school to prison pipeline that will now send them to their permanent homes of adult prison.
And lastly, which is the heaviest one, what is the village to prison pipeline?
So this is my intellectual property that I've created that's now going to be the work. I would probably say my final masterpiece work as a corporate grassroots revolutionary, empowerment revolutionary. And that is understanding that the cradle to prison pipeline and the school to prison pipeline are directly connected, but there's something that gives both of those realities their existence. And that stems from the village of those who are oppressed and from the villages of those who are the oppressor. The village of those who are oppressed is fractured and unlevel, and that village is supposed to be the catalyst of teaching and modeling the culture for the parents, the homes. But because it is fractured and unlevel, that means that now the parents don't have an appropriate model to now raise their children. So now the home becomes unlevel and fractured. And therefore, it gives the birth to the cradle to prison pipeline and the school to prison pipeline. When I was doing school to prison pipeline, my stepson, I knew that there was something missing. And at first I'm like, okay, it's the cradle to prison pipeline. But then I thought about it. No, it's deeper than that, because now we're talking individual homes. Something has to shape each individual home. And that's where the village is supposed to come in. Hence the concept, it takes a village to raise a child. I've modified that to say, it takes an empowered village to empower our children. And because the village is not empowered, the village now doesn't have the construct for the individual family to tap into, so that then they can empower themselves in order to empower their children. And therefore, you have permanent chaos and confusion, thus the cradle to prison pipeline and the school to prison pipeline.
And an empowered village can help with the school to prison pipeline as well as the cradle to prison pipeline. But if the village is lost, that's checkmate.
That's
checkmate. So I was trying to find this, and I should have drawn out my question a little bit better, because I wanted to show this video that you sent when I asked you the question about the cradle to prison pipeline, and this is sad. It's telling, but this is what we're dealing with: the cradle to prison pipeline.
Yes, sir.
Hey, oh, fuck me like you want me. Pull them thongs down, scream, no baloney. Hey, let me beat it till the morning. Sneaker link, you know I'm thuggin' and I'm horny, bitch. Hey, bring that in. Hey, oh, fuck me like you want me. Pull them thongs down, scream, no baloney. Hey, let me beat it till the morning. Sneaker link, you know I'm thuggin' and I'm horny, bitch. Hey, bring that in.
So, Brother Craig, what are we seeing in that video?
So you're seeing two brothers, one in Pampers, probably no more than 3, 2, 3. The other, the older brother, and they're imitating and emulating a very hot rapper who's out now called Big Boogie. And if you hear that musical arrangement, you hear the beats. And I'm talking about they are some gangster beats. And then in the background, you can hear something the sound of ass clapping. And then you hear squeaking sound of having sex on a bed.
Yeah.
That's not a very firm bed.
Yeah.
But springs are being worn out. And so Big Boogie has a mesmerizing voice. Mike says ass clapping. Yeah, the strip club, and they have the strippers making their ass clap. And so Big Boogie has a mesmerizing voice. And Naru knows this. They can take a voice and make it even more mesmerizing with the various programming. These people have skill. And if you heard the song, Put That Pussy On Me, that's the name of the song, Put That Pussy On Me. And it's about 3, Boogie makes, I think 3, no more than 4 rappers are on the track, but I think it's 3, including Boogie. And those other guys do their little part. But when he comes in with his voice and that beat, it's over. And he's romanticized these parents, because that's the only way that the children can listen to it. He's romanticized the parents, so the parents now allow the children to look at it. So now they look at the videos with the parents, and now they imitate and emulate what Big Boogie sees. And it's a cesspool of toxicity, brother.
Yeah.
It's bad, bro.
Yeah. Okay. So if you missed the beginning of the show, you are listening to and watching the Revolutionary Code, where we bring the truth about how governmental politics actually works in every facet of human existence and how that affects our people, Black people here in America, Africa, and the diaspora. Tonight is our 71st episode, and the title is The Collapse of American Support, that is in quotes, the continuation of benign neglect and the rise of the Black nation state. My name is Tamani M. Wandani. I'm the founder of the Black Gold Nation, and my co-host is Brother Craig B. Lee, who's our chief consultant for political strategy and implementation, as well as our adult education division. The collapse of American support, quote unquote, the continuation of benign neglect and the rise of the Black nation state. So, Brother Craig, a nation state can be defined as a, quote, a territorially bounded sovereign polity or society that is ruled in the name of a community of citizens who identify themselves as a nation, a territorially bounded sovereign society that is ruled in the name of a community of citizens who identify themselves as a nation. So can you roll with that definition of nation state?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I can roll with that.
A nation state will have its own economy, its own education system, its own political structure, its own security, and every other aspect of community development. A nation state to a large degree is or can be self-sufficient. So, Brother Craig, can a community controlled by Black people, like Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, can that be categorized or seen as a nation state?
No.
No, tell me why not?
Because A, you're not controlling the economy.
Okay.
Because your economy that you are leveraging inside of the overall economy is still tied to the currency of the dominant society.
Okay.
So again, to make the suggestion that there's a parallel nation state inside of an entity that controls the currency valuation, the gas prices, all of this. So you're subject to all of this. No matter how much you maneuver and do, you're not controlling any of that.
Okay.
Because you have to have your own currency, your own trading, all this stuff. You're allowed to do these things based on their foreign policy.
Okay.
But if they were to say, okay, you can't go to Africa, guess what? No matter how much trading or money that we're generating within our own city or town, you would not be able to go to Africa. If they say you couldn't go to Jamaica, you wouldn't be able to go to Jamaica.
Right.
You see? So you will never fully function as a nation state. You can have certain elements of that. And that's why I say that's as good as we're going to get.
Okay.
We now leverage equity. A lot of these things people don't think about when they start talking about sovereignty, nation state.
That's right. Yeah.
Way more complex than that, than what they are thinking.
Okay.
Or they're believing. And so when you start to look at the socioeconomic elements of public schooling, hospitals, all of these things, you would have to put these things together on your own.
Right.
Now, when our people were forced to do these things between 1864, right before the Civil War ended, and 1964, you had some examples of Black hospitals and Black schools and these things, okay? But still, even with that, it was all contingent on what? The American dollar.
Yeah, the larger power structure.
Exactly. It wasn't our dollar. The public school system was contingent upon what? Overall, their tax dollars.
Right.
That's why it's been a fight. Their property tax dollars, which our people actually contribute to through their rent, but the way it is registered and recorded for the hustle in the game is if you don't have your name on a property deed, they say you're not paying taxes, which is really not true. You're contributing to whoever's on the tax roll.
Right.
You're contributing to their revenue stream by paying rent. But because we don't understand these things, this is where white folks like, hey, we're really about tired of this situation. Because let me tell you, it was amazing to know that brilliant people like Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton Houston, really believe that by desegregating white schools and putting Negroes in a white space,
it's gonna make things better.
But you had your own school.
That wasn't good enough.
That wasn't good enough. All they needed was better resources,
That's
more
right.
equitable resources,
Right.
and they would have, because guess what they had? Caring and compassionate teachers.
Yeah, they cared about the kids. Yeah. Yeah.
But now you bring them into the white school. So what do white people do? They take their children out of the schools.
Yeah. Move them somewhere else.
Create the private schools, the parochial schools, until such time that the cost became too expensive, and now we have to do something. In comes in the 1960s the concept of the magnet schools, that now you could leverage those resources back, which is why we looked at that film Waiting for Superman.
Yeah.
A few years.
So most people don't know. Most people think that Tulsa, Oklahoma was a city, but it was actually more of a neighborhood, right?
It's a neighborhood. It's a community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the greatest strength or plus of Tulsa were all the Black-owned businesses, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you consider a predominantly Black populated and controlled zip code to be a more powerful entity than a neighborhood like Tulsa? If you control the zip code as opposed to just a neighborhood, that is more powerful because you're controlling more things, correct?
Well, in many instances, the zip code is going to just be a collection of neighborhoods.
Right.
Instead of one neighborhood,
right.
It might be
several,
3, 4.
Right.
From that standpoint. But again, when you expand the territory like that, sometimes you'll have still large Black space mass, but in other instances, you're bringing in other ethnic groups. Within that dynamic. But again, you can't control a zip code because the zip code is still going to be controlled by the municipal government, whether it be the city council, the parish or county commission, and the school board.
Yep.
So until you can gain control of those three legislative bodies,
right,
the executive branch of that city and the executive branch of that parish or county and the executive branch of that school board, you're still going to be subject to the policies that regulate those zip codes.
Right, which goes to the last part of my question, which is why the goal has to be to control a municipality, a village, a town, a small or mid-sized city, correct?
Exactly.
Cool, all right. So second to the last question, per the village to prison pipeline, how can we create our own Black nation state, if you will, or control municipality to push back against the reality of what we're facing? From the article I read at the beginning of this show to your explanation and examples of benign neglect to the village to prison pipeline, how can we create our own entity by which we can push back against all of that and alleviate some of this oppression?
The mobilizing institution back in the early 1900s, coming out of slavery, was the melanated African American, African descendant church.
Okay.
The mobilizing point of focus now are your schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you mobilize the children, the parents, regardless of whether they are positive or negative, they follow.
Mm-hmm.
They will follow. If you mobilize the children and the parents, you now create the voting block to which you now can take over your various districts via the city council, via the parish commission, via the school board.
Right.
Now you have a consolidated
voting block
and caucus for you to now take over
Right.
the city. But it requires a new mindset that moves beyond Eurocentric individualism and back into Afrocentric collectivism. Hence why I'm always talking about spirituality, organic right culture, spirituality, organic right culture, because those two things trigger, those two pillars trigger the other four pillars: education, economics, socioeconomics, and politics. And the way that this thing is going right now, I mean, you're not going to be able to compete effectively or mobilize if you don't have those first three pillars in place, because you need those in place in order to do the economic piece.
Right.
Like, we talk a lot about economics, economic development, entrepreneurship, but in order to now increase that 3% cooperative economic spending percentage up to 35, 40, 45%, in order to tap into that $1.5 trillion, you got to be able to detoxify the Negro mind and now bond this entity to having a responsible mindset to want to invest in, shop, or do whatever services with other African-American firms. And that comes by way of spirituality and organic right. Those are the bonding agents that would be needed. So that's how we would do it in terms of the village to prison pipeline, because the number one prison beyond you going into physical prison is the prison of your mind.
Right.
Because that's how you go to the physical prison. So that process, now having your hybrids, your grassroots hybrids in place to create the physical reality, that now entices those parents to tap in when they can see that individuals are really caring and concerned about their children. That now will cause them to rock and roll, because you're not only selling the parent, the children now are helping to sell the parent.
Would you agree that there is no aspect of American society that's not toxic?
There's no aspect of American society that's not toxic.
And by controlling a municipality, you have a chance to change that society and that environment, correct?
Exactly.
Which is why it's a must do, because there's no other way to make this thing happen.
Ain't no other way, because your oppressor is not going to stop doing what they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
And what they tell you.
Not even if you ask nicely. All right, brother. Last question. You get well, not last question, last statement. You get one takeaway from tonight's show based on the things that we've discussed that people will have with them for the rest of their lives. So if you only get one takeaway based on everything we talked about, what would that one takeaway be?
Benign neglect is real. It doesn't disappear because you ask nicely or you ask hard. It doesn't disappear if you pray to Jesus, Allah, Allahu Akbar, Yahweh, and it doesn't disappear if you get out in the streets and yip and yell to the top of your damn lungs. Benign neglect can only be eliminated by the oppressor, the group who is being oppressed. Because the entity who is neglecting your ass could give a damn about you.
They don't care.
They don't give a damn.
That's right.
And so if we are serious about the business of, it's kind of like the female who is being battered, and she goes to her friend girls and, girl, I'm so tired of getting my ass whooped. Girl, he punched me in my throat last night. He bust both of my goddamn eyes. But why won't you leave? Because I love him. I love him. I remember back 10 years ago, he took me on a outing. He bought me some chicken and we went and had some drinks. And he can be so nice. But girl, he's gonna kill you. I know, but I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. So this is where we're at with our oppressor. Always hoping. Always believing. But the funny thing is, unlike the husband who probably did something nice at a particular time or every now and then does something nice, unless you call government cheese and a couple of things. But then again, for the Negro, you don't have to do too much now.
That's right.
Now for us, we gotta do every goddamn thing. You know, for the black business owner, they're gonna put a whole bunch of.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're gonna give you hell.
But for them, you ain't gotta do that much.
Right.
But that's what it's really like. Benign neglect is not gonna disappear until we make it disappear. And this is just the reality of where we're at.
Right. Amen. All right. Well, that concludes tonight's show. We're gonna open this thing up for questions and answers. So Brother Naru has turned his camera on. So Brother Naru, any questions or comments for our Brother Craig?
Always, man. You know, I'm always trying to learn how Brother Craig thinks and how his brain works. So, Brother Craig, I just want to, you oftentimes you quote the Bible, but then you also make fun of Christian doctrine. So I'm wondering how much of the Bible you actually believe in, or do you believe that it's just stories and parables to guide us? And along those lines, you also talk about the creator. So I'm wondering, for you, is the creator a male, a female, or a spirit, or something else? Those two kind of go hand in hand. And this is just for clarification on where you stand, my brother.
Great question. Tamani was kind of asking me, how did my engagement last week in Woodville, Mississippi go? Because I was introduced by preacher brother who was a graduate of Xavier, and I hold no punches back when I speak in front of Christian audiences. And so what I've learned, Naru, and I'll ask you this question so you'll see where I'm going with it. If you have to look at finding a cure for a cancer, an antidote for poison, or a cure for some virus, where is the cure or the antidote for the virus, the cancer, or the poison found? Is it found outside of the cancer, virus, or poison, or inside the cancer, virus, or poison?
More than likely, it's going to be found inside of it.
Exactly. So the Bible, along with the Quran, cancer, virus, poison, all wrapped into one. So-called woke people say, throw it away. It's flawed. It's bad. But Naru, those books have now infected the majority of our folks with the cancer, with the poison, with the virus.
That's right.
If we throw the book away and not seek the cure or the antidote, which is inside of the book, just like it is inside of the cancer, the virus, the poison, then we won't be able to heal the people. So what I do is I go inside of their book, because even in their book, though, there are, things that are upside down, right? There's still some truth in the book. And the book is of parables. The book is metaphoric, it's figurative, it's allegorical. Some of it is slightly literal, but most of it is allegorical, metaphysical, figurative. And one now has to be able to use the book. A preacher, after I finished speaking, she said, what everybody needs to know, prayer changes things, prayer. And I told her, like I told my grandmother in 2005, Brother Naru, prayer without action changes nothing. You can pray all day, but if you're not going to get up and do something, your prayers are going to go unanswered. Who do you then blame? Oh, that's right, Jesus, God. But the reality is you blame yourself, because this entity, most people incorrectly try to refer to